A while ago, I came across a story in a newspaper which all started with a joke about a dongle. And in some ways, it illustrates how quickly your life can fall apart in the digital world. There was a conference, a developers conference, and the speaker was talking about dongles, and somebody found this funny as a sort of double entendre and started sniggering. Next thing he knew, a lady in the audience got up and took a photograph. And he thought, oh, she's taking a photograph of the crowd to put on Twitter. But actually what got put on Twitter was a photograph of him laughing at the dongle and a comment about how unacceptable and sexist this was. Next thing he knows, he gets called out of the audience by the conference organizers and admonished for his childish behavior. But by this time, it's already gone viral on Twitter. And his company's name appeared. And 10 minutes later, he gets a phone call from his boss telling him he's fired. This has happened within 10 minutes. What happens then is that people get very outraged about it. And they start bombarding the company of the woman, threatening to keep crashing the website unless they sack her. 2 days later, she's sacked. So from one little instance, it got blown out of so much proportion that two people's lives are in ruins within a couple of days. And this can be very typical of the digital world. It can magnify humanity and magnify what goes on. That's an example of something called shaming. You can be shamed in the digital world for all sorts of reasons. You can be shamed because you've got the wrong body image. You can be shamed because you're not politically correct enough. You can be shamed because you're too politically correct. And you can be shamed when humor goes wrong. Has anybody ever heard of Justine Sacco? I mean, this was a terribly bad example of self-referential sarcasm going completely wrong. She sent this tweet when she was getting on a plane at Heathrow Airport, and by the time she arrived in Africa, it had gone viral. She had all sorts of hate mail waiting for her when she finally switched on her computer. She was also sacked by her company by the time she got there. So again, one foolish tweet. I don't believe this woman is a racist. I've heard her speak on television, and I'm pretty sure it was a joke gone wrong. A more recent example, a guy at University College London who said a joke which was supposed to be self-referential and didn't go down very well either, and he was accused of sexism and lost his job. So one little thing can easily go wrong and get you into an awful lot of trouble. People can retweet what you say, people can put your emails online, all sorts of things. Of course, sometimes you can get yourself into trouble. The Ashley Madison website was hacked. Do you know what this website is? Yeah, it's basically a website if you want to have an affair. You go on the Ashley Madison website and somebody hacked into it and released all the email details. So you've got to be careful in the digital world. But there are many advantages as well. It's changed the way we work. We've just done a big survey with a company called Orange Box who do office furniture. But they wanted to look at changing patterns in the workplace and how people are working away from home and how that affects people. I'm very privileged that I can work here. It's not my house, I hasten to add. This is a country club out in Somerset, which I go every day to work on my laptop, because now you can work wherever you want to be. You can work at home, and there are advantages of it. But there are also disadvantages. One of the problems is you're always online. You never have any privacy. We found that stress in the workplace is going up exponentially at the moment. It's become the biggest reason why people have time off work. It used to be musculoskeletal things, but now it's stress. And one of the reasons is that you can never get away from the digital world. The digital world is also changing the nature of relationships. I've had quite a pleasant time on Facebook recently. I've discovered old friends from school. I got in touch with a guy who was in my class, and we hadn't seen each other for about 40 years, I suppose. Went out to have some drinks, became friends again, and it started a new friendship that I wouldn't otherwise have if it wasn't for Facebook. So it really is making connections. And people say, well, these aren't real friendships on Facebook. They don't, I mean, some of them aren't, I suppose. But the reality is you're more likely to keep seeing the friends you've got on Facebook than if you don't have them there. And research has shown that actually it's strengthening friendships rather than weakening them. But one of the biggest problems we also have is online bullying, cyberbullying. And we've been doing some research with schools, and it seems to be becoming worse and worse and worse. It's very easy to bully people anonymously. And even at a distance, even if it's not fully anonymous, just the fact you're there at a distance, you can't see their reaction face to face, makes people more likely to bully other people than if they're there and with them. What we've also found, though, is that people use the digital world to reflect their status. So, for example, the number of likes you have on Facebook has become a big thing. And people even employ companies to actually just go online and give them more likes, because it makes them look better in front of their friends and colleagues. And companies do this as well. Commercial companies want to have their product liked by lots of people. So there is a lot of status attached to it. But status isn't new. Even in the early days of mobile phones were seen as a status symbol. The research was done to show that people used to like putting their phones out on the table so you could see what people had got. It was a way of showing off your taste, and in the early days, your wealth, because they were quite expensive. Does anybody remember the days when they first started putting additional features on mobile phones, like alarms? Has anybody ever done the thing of pretending your phone works on the underground? It's a state, so you set the, I mean, this is a thing we used to do in the old days with the old non-smartphones. So you set the alarm and it goes off, and it's, hello. Yeah, I'm on the underground. No, it's one of those special ones that works on the underground. Yeah, I'll be there in 10 minutes. And of course, you got everybody jealous that you've got one of these special phones that works on the underground. But the point of the matter is, it is a status symbol, and perhaps always has been. One of the problems we're seeing at the moment is crime. You've got cybercrime, of course, but also the digital world creates new types of crime. So, for example, automatic checkouts in stores. There's been a huge spike in the amount of crime committed since these things came into stores. And it's not that criminals are using them to get away with stealing, they're training people to be criminals. There was a research done of people who admitted stealing using these terminals, but also said they never stole before. Now, what normally happens is the first time people steal, they just got frustrated trying to swipe the thing through, and eventually they think, oh, sod that, I'll just put it in my basket and go. And of course, they get away with it. Next time they're having trouble, they think, well, I got away with it last time, and I'll just put that in the bag. And then about the third or fourth time, they think, oh, actually, I don't really feel like paying for this, I'll just put it straight in the bag. I mean, what in psychology we call it classical conditioning. You've given somebody a reward for stealing the first time, and they got away with it, so they think, well, we'll try it again. And this is what happens. Now, there's been a lot of talk about computer games and how they actually help people, or not help people, but create more criminality amongst people. Ironically, the research seems to show the opposite. Games like Grand Theft Auto, which are very addictive, actually reduce crime. And the reason is simply because they keep people stuck in the house. They found that crime amongst teenagers has dropped quite dramatically because of game playing. And it's essentially, a lot of crime was because of boredom in the old days. When I grew up, you spent quite a lot of your childhood being bored in your teenage years, but now you're never bored. You've always got something you can do. So things are changing, and people are staying occupied. Every moment can be filled with something enticing. There are more serious sides to it. One of the issues in the digital world is the relationship between the individual and the state, and how that's changing. I don't know if you saw this incredibly disturbing video in America of a policeman murdering a black man in cold blood, more or less, which nobody would have known about had somebody not been there with a smartphone taking a video. And so having a digitally armed population, if you want to call it that, can prevent the authorities from getting away with stuff they would have got away with before. If you've seen the video, what happens is the policeman then drops a taser, I think it is, right next to the man to pretend there'd been a struggle. But of course, there hadn't been. He just shot him as he was running away. But the other side of this, of course, is the authorities can spy on us all the time. People like the Department of Homeland Security in the States are doing more and more surveillance. And one of the big issues of today is how you stay private, how you keep your information away, how you stop people tracking. There's quite an interesting German company who developed a piece of software called Track Me Not. And what Track Me Not does is it essentially does completely random searches all the time on your computer. So if somebody's coming to look at your Google search profile, I think, what the hell's going on with this guy? It's complete. So they can't find any pattern or any data in it. And as we go forward, privacy is going to become more important. Countries are having a bigger and bigger reach. People are being prosecuted in other countries for things they've done online, because the argument is this is on some other country's server. And so cybercrime has become international, and so is the policing of it. Perhaps one of the biggest irritations of the digital world is spam and the constant stream of it that we seem to get. Last year, I'm rather ashamed to admit, I had 4 accidents, 3 on a motorbike and 1 in a car. And only one of them was my fault, I hasten to add, one of the motorbike ones. But the irony was, the one that was my fault was the one that caused me least hassle in the end, because the ones that weren't my fault have led to a constant stream of calls, probably about 10 calls a day, from different agencies trying to get me to sue the drivers involved, which I had no reason to do because I wasn't injured, luckily, in any of them. And what they do is they just have machines that call out hundreds of numbers at once. They can just have a constant stream of calling. And it got to the point where I couldn't use my home phone. And 90% of the calls on this thing actually are still from, even a year on, are still from these people spamming me with calls. And it's different people each time, different numbers each time. I guess they're disguising the number, or it's independent freelancers doing this from all over the country. But in the end, it becomes so oppressive that you can't get on with your normal life because you're being so bombarded with these things. The other kind of spam, of course, is these kind of emails. Now, you get the feeling these spammers aren't that clever, to be perfectly honest, because I've blanked out the name, but essentially they keep sending them from the names of all my friends. They've obviously gone through my address book somehow and got the names of my friends. So I'd have to believe that all my friends had left their jobs and started working for the natural drug market in Russia, and all felt that I wasn't doing a very good job of satisfying my woman. Now, to be fair, isn't a particularly likely scenario, at least I hope not. So, why do people fall for it? Well, actually what they found in research is it is actually the fact these are so transparent is actually quite helpful to spammers. Because it basically filters out people who aren't incredibly gullible. And people who are very gullible will be the ones who reply. So, although it may seem crazy, and you think, well, how can anybody ever fall for something like this? It seems to be working in that kind of way. Communities. The digital world has allowed us to bring communities together, whether it be communities of consumers, like TripAdvisor. And this is a very good example here of consumer power. People don't trust experts anymore when it comes to reviews. They'd rather trust the consumer. So if you read a hotel review, you're much more interested in what other people who've stayed there say than what a travel writer has said in a newspaper, for example. And this can be quite a good thing. Of course, Amazon's a typical example of this flourishing as well. One of the most useful sites I find, even as a father, is Mumsnet. It has some really useful advice about parenting, about what to do if your child's not well, about good days out with the kids, all this kind of stuff. But sometimes you might say, a problem in communities. So the problem with Mumsnet, I found when I was working with the government, I worked at the Department of Health for a while, was that they don't trust any advice that doesn't come from another mother. That's kind of the atmosphere on there. We know best because we're parents, and we don't need to be told what to do by people who aren't parents of young children. So we were often seeing medical advice on there that we thought wasn't good advice, wasn't safe advice, and we had to try and work out how to put it right. But if you sent a senior doctor on there, like say an older male doctor, people would say, well, hang on a minute, you were a parent years ago, you don't know about modern parenting. So what we had to do was send doctors on who are young mothers, because by sending a doctor on as a young mother, you get over the objection that they don't know what it's like to be a modern parent. So understanding the barriers to communicating with people and connecting proved to be very important. We've been doing some work recently on suicide prevention. Suicide is a terrible thing in Britain. It kills 3 times as many Britons as road accidents. 6,000 British people a year commit suicide or more. And there are signs that people are going down that route. One of the early signs is often self-harm. And if you can stop people self-harming, you can often stop them going too far. And this is quite an interesting initiative, which is called the Butterfly Project. Is anybody familiar with this? So the Butterfly Project is that instead of harming you, in the place where you were going to harm yourself, you draw a beautiful butterfly and you photograph it and you upload it to the website. It's a cry for help on the one hand because you're putting it onto the website. It's a distraction on the other hand because you're doing something else rather than self-harming. And it's bringing you into a supportive community that can help you and maybe get you away from your suicidal thoughts. Similar to communities is crowds. And crowds seem to work quite well at times and very badly at other times. A good example of crowds working well is Wikipedia. And what we found when we researched this is that if you want to gather information from people and you want that information to be of good quality, there are a few things that you have to put in place. One is that you have to have a situation where people are not sure of the opinions of those reading it. If people know what the opinions of those reading it are, they'll just play to that opinion. Secondly, they have to believe that those people are experts. So you can't just put any old rubbish on and people will believe it. And thirdly, it has to be moderated in a way that's seen as fair and, what's the right word, unbiased. If you have those 3 things in place, wikis work. If you don't have them in place, they often won't work very well. I remember when I was in government, we had a wiki we created for small businesses to share ideas. But essentially all we ever got on it was abuse about how bad the government was. We didn't actually get any ideas at all for small businesses because people felt that's what would go down well and that's what people would want to hear. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect, at least for me, I find this is the thing that shakes my faith in humanity more than anything else, is reading comments at the bottom of newspaper articles. Particularly the Daily Mail, I have to admit. These are some really horrible comments recently put up by the Daily Mail about, these are Daily Mail readers, and you can see they're very popular with other Daily Mail readers, about what they think of the refugee crisis. So apparently Daily Mail readers would rather see dead bodies piled high than have them enter the country. They'd rather have the Germans build concentration camps to keep them out. I mean, this is not a nice thing to read, and it shakes you. Again, it's magnifying. People wouldn't say this probably in public, but they'll say it on the bottom of a newspaper. Again, because people think that's what everybody else who reads that newspaper believes. So they don't moderate the comments, they're not done carefully. Absence. One of the great things about mobile phones is that you can always get the camera out and take a picture or take a video, and they create some lovely memories. One of the things I really, really enjoy doing is looking back over things I did with my son when he was little, and you can get a record as he grows up. But there came a point where I found I was actually spending my whole time with him, looking at him through the phone, videoing him, photographing him, and stuff like that. And in the end, he felt like, I've got to withdraw from this. I've got to be present in the moment, and not simply looking through a lens at people. I mean, the other thing is, you can always be in some other place rather than with the person you're with. And this is a very typical scene at dinner, unfortunately. There was quite an interesting photograph that appeared on the internet. Have you ever seen this recently? So this woman is unique because she's not the only one there not looking for a phone. Big data is another great opportunity for us in the digital world. We see it in the world of consumer data, companies like Nectar and Amazon. And the way that we analyze people has changed. So in the old days, we'd try to just put people in segments and say, well, I've seen what you've bought, so you're in that segment. And people in that segment tend to buy those things, so I'll recommend those things to you. What tends to happen now is that they don't bother going through all that. All they'll simply say is, well, we've seen that people who buy this product buy that other product, so just because you've bought it, we'll suggest it to you. So you don't need to find anything out about the person in theory. You can simply just look at patterns in their data. And this is what's dominated retail recently. It's the idea that you don't need a hypothesis anymore. Because you've got all the data, you just process the data and see what pops out. Now it's changing the way that a lot of science is done as well. One really useful application of big data is monitoring patterns of illness. This is a map of America where they think flu's going to strike based on Google searches on Amazon. So if people in certain parts of the States have started Googling certain words, it's a symbol that flu might break out there. So if they've been typing things like, I've got a bit of a cold, or I've been sneezing too much, or my kids have got a fever, that kind of thing. The digital world also has the advantage that enables us to do good better. In other words, be more efficient in the way that we do good things. There's a really good initiative in London at the moment called Plan Zeros. Has anybody heard of Plan Zeros? So what Plan Zeros is about, it's about distributing food that would otherwise be thrown away to homeless people. And traditionally, it's just been done on a very localized basis. So I think Pret a Manger is a company that does this. So they'll just give it away to a particular person who comes every day and gets it and goes to a particular venue and gives it out, which is fine, but it's not very efficient. You find that sometimes you have a huge amount of food in a part of London and nobody really wants it. In other parts of London where people are desperate to get some of this free food, there's none there. So what Plan Zeros does is it links these companies together. It can be people like Pret or Eat or other big chains, or it can simply be an independent baker who has to throw out the cakes at the end of the day. And what they do is they track demand and supply across London and move the food across London on a day-to-day basis so that none of it gets wasted and everybody who wants the food gets some. Now that wouldn't have been easy in the days before the digital world. So it's a really good example of how you can do good in a more efficient way. Other examples, things like microfinancing. Does anybody know what microfinancing is? Yeah, so you can basically make contact with a person in another country, like say in the developing world, and they say, I need to borrow $10 to buy grain or something like that, and you can lend it directly. You don't have to go through an aid agency. So peer-to-peer lending as a form of charity is very efficient. Now there's a company organising this called Kiva, and Kiva help you to give your money to people you want to help. And on average, you'll get your money back, you'll get your loan back 19 out of 20 times. You know, 1 in 20 companies goes bust of these little entrepreneurs. But that's not bad, is it? I mean, if you gave your money to charity, you only get 1 hit out of it. Here you're getting 19 hits before you lose it. You can help 19 different companies. So how can we use the technology in that way? Another simple example is something called Good Gym. Has anybody heard of Good Gym before? Well, Good Gym's quite interesting. It started here in London. I think it's expanding around the country now. And what Good Gym does is it enables you to exercise in a way that helps other people. So you put in your postcode on the website, and you put in the kind of workout you want to do. So imagine you put in your postcode and you say, I want a 20-minute run, and I want 20 minutes of weights. And it'll say something like, well, run round to Mrs. Jones' house, she lives 20 minutes away, and then dig her garden. Or if you just want to run, it might be run round to Mr. Smith's house, get his prescription, run to Boots, get it, run back to his house with it, and then run home. So you're doing something which is helping people at the same time. And if you're registered as disabled, then you can volunteer to be one of the people who's helped on Good Gym. The other side of the internet is that it can very quickly make people famous, or unfortunately infamous. Things like videos going viral. You can be minding your own business one day and suddenly you're an internet star the next. I suppose most of you remember Fenton the dog, do you? I mean, for those of you who don't know, Fenton was a dog who his owner lost control of him in Richmond Park. He ended up chasing a herd of deer across the, I suppose it's not really funny, but can't help laughing. He chased a herd of deer across the road, and of course the funny thing was his owner desperately trying to call him off, which he wasn't able to do. And then more recently, there's this guy called Ronnie Pickering. You heard of him? Yeah, do you know who I am, Ronnie Pickering? And again, this has gone viral. There's quite a funny a video that the BBC showed on Newsnight the other day, which is like a mashup of him put in other situations. I've got it on here, let's have a look at it.
Ronnie Pickering! Ronnie Pickering! Come on, tell me who are you? Ronnie Pickering!
Who the f***'s that?
Yeah, me!
I admire your luck, Mr.
Pickering! Ronnie Pickering!
I don't know who you are.
Ronnie Pickering! What are you? Ronnie Pickering!
If you're looking for ransom, I can tell you I don't have money.
Let's have a fair knuckle fight then!
This is
Ronnie Pickering!
what I do have are a very particular set of skills.
The last bearded man to lead the Labour Party was
Ronnie Pickering!
Who the f***'s that?
Yeah, me!
Yeah, I don't know why that's funny, it just is really, isn't it? But let's go back to here. So that's a quick oversight of some of the issues that are going on in the digital world and how it's changing our lives. As we can see, there are big advantages and disadvantages. The thing that I would say above all that strikes me when I was doing this research is how it magnifies what happens. Things that would have been fairly small incidents become blown out of all proportion for good or for bad. It gives us happiness and sadness. There's freedom because we can do what we want. There's oppression because we've got people watching over us all the time. But it's up to us as UX people to try and make the digital world a happier place where everybody can have a good quality of life. So thank you very much.